Hello, check. Check, check, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's a good sign. Now the real question. Please. Or any of them. Talking
Audio test for mic number 14. This is the audio test. Audio test for mic number 14. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Audio test. Audio test for mic number 14.
Okay, welcome. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Pelham Board of Education of February 12th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll ask Mrs. DeAngelis for a reiteration of the executive session motions.
We met in executive session to discuss collective negotiations and the employment history of a particular person.
Thank you. We've got a special guest tonight, so welcome. Looking forward to hearing more from you. We have a lot going on tonight, but I did just want to call out to our local scouting leaders, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. I know I had a wonderful time at my daughter's and many local young women for the Girl Scout dance, and the Boy Scouts had a big, very successful pancake breakfast. So I think scouting adds so much to the students in our district. So big shout out to everybody who volunteers their time for that. We are going to be discussing our strategic plan tonight, taking the first steps on that, and we have an initial budget presentation. I also wanted to, in the spirit of transparency, make sure that the community is updated on the latest thinking and developments on the stormwater issue and Julianne's playground. I think I can speak for everybody that we are committed to doing the right thing for Julianne's playground and our neighbors who are affected by flooding and the entire Pelham community. And I want people to understand that we've considered this in a careful process that's been transparent. I've done everything I can to make sure we're by the book in terms of open meeting law, that the discussions have happened in the proper way. The process, we first learned about this in October. My understanding is the Village of Pelham has been considering it for approximately 2 years, but we were notified in October, and after that time, we've had 3 meetings of the Facilities Committee. The Village of Pelham did a presentation to the Facilities Committee. We've discussed this at least in 4 or 5 board meetings. We had a presentation from the mayor of the Village of Pelham in one of our board meetings, and we also held an open forum for the community and heard from a lot of our neighbors. We've said this before, but I just want to be clear that we've decided an easement is not the right solution to this problem. We all want to find a solution, but an easement is not the right solution. And at this point, the Village of Pelham has not agreed to consider other solutions. We are concerned, and we've heard from community members that the Village of Pelham may pursue condemnation of Julianne's playground, which we don't want to see that. So that's where we are, and we're trying to operate in transparency and keep everyone informed. If anybody, yes.
Say a few things as well, some of which are going to be duplicative, but I think it's important for the community to hear the Board of Education's thinking on this, and this is mine. And I invite my colleagues on the board to agree or disagree with me. But the first thing that I want to say is that to echo what Michael said, we, the Board of Education, agree that the flooding in North Pelham is a problem which is inarguably worth solving. But we, the board, are unanimous, and I'm looking around the room to my colleagues. We are unanimous in...
And with Ian.
And with Ian, yeah. Ian's on the line. We are unanimous in not wanting to go down the path of an easement, because this is a massive, massive engineering project which will have a presence for generations. And the municipality driving this project is the Village of Pelham, and therefore the Village of Pelham should assume all the risks, and therefore the project should be completed on property owned by the village. So because the Board of Education wants to find a path forward, we began exploring conceptual alternatives in which land could be transferred from the district to the village, and the district would get something in return in this transaction, which would ultimately make the district no worse off, wouldn't impede upon the buildability of the site, and would minimize the impact on the families living in the immediate vicinity. But this, as Michael, I think, alluded to, this alternative line of discussion was rejected by the village of Pelham, because for the district to transfer land to the village would be subject to voter approval, the district's voter approval, and the village does not want it to go to a vote. Now, it's not for me to say why the village should wish to sidestep a vote, but it is for me to say that the Board of Education, I think, being framed as villains in this is completely unjustified, if anyone felt like making that implication. Support from the district's many stakeholders is by no means unilateral for this project. This is a big decision with long-lasting implications, and so a public vote seems like a reasonable path to pursue. I will also echo Michael in saying we have reason to believe from several sources in the community that the village proceeding with eminent domain is accelerating from a hypothetical to a reality, and I believe that that would not be a fruitful path forward. So those are my thoughts, and I look around the room and at the screen for Ian to echo or disagree with anything I said.
Thanks, Will. So I'll reiterate, I'm extremely happy that both villages are trying to remedy the flooding in Pelham. It is devastating and traumatic to many of us. It affects Colonial School, and it's by no means an afterthought to this board, the flooding that's occurring in this town. I think in agreement with what Will said, the easement is not a good option for the school district. It increases risks and costs to the district in perpetuity. It increases the work required by district administrators. And while Julian's playground is cherished, and I think we all agree that, you know, it should remain a playground for generations to come, it does change it devalues the project devalues the property, and we have to take that into consideration. We have talked about alternatives. I'm reiterating what Will said. We've talked about alternatives and transferring the property, which we think is probably the best course for this. Okay.
So I do echo what Will and everybody else here has said. Look, my heart goes out to anyone that floods. I believe that we have to come to a solution with that, and the town or the villages have to come to a solution. However, anything that would interfere or affect either our access or any financial means for the school district, I believe we need unanimous consensus, or at least a willing need to engage all the participants in this village because we serve all the kids in this town, not just the kids in North Pelham. And again, my heart goes out to anyone that floods. But we do have to take a look and ensure a few things. One is that the Board of Ed or the district will never be put into a place where we will have risk. Our administrators have a lot to do today, and in order to throw more work at them would be unfair. We have to protect Julianne's playground because we think it's a cherished part of this community. And I do feel, as board members, we've done everything possible to be good neighbors. We put out options, and unfortunately, those options have not been taken up once we've proposed them. So it is unfortunate. Again, an easement just doesn't work for us as a district.
I'll just say that if I were to say anything, I'm going to be repeating everything that was said prior to me speaking, but I agree, an easement is not the answer for us. It poses too much risk for the district. At the same time, we're very much a community that cares about one another, and the district and the village and the town, and both villages have had great relationships all this time, and I'd like to see that continue. And I think it's important for the community to know that we take this very seriously. You know, as Natalie said, the flooding is a serious serious issue. It affects us, but we see how it affects our neighbors, and so we feel that we've brought alternatives that would address the very issue and still keep, keep all interests that the district has, keeping the playground sacred and helping to address the flooding. We feel that we've brought some alternatives that would be a good idea.
And this is Ian, and I apologize, everyone. I'm in Washington, D.C., but I concur with all of my fellow board members. The issue of flooding is something we are all extremely concerned with. We're victims of it as well with our colonial school and just our neighbors. So it's something we want to see solved. And for all the reasons that my colleagues have shared, the easement is not the right answer. But I would also love to step back. You know, we're about to hear from our strategic planning consultants because we're about to embark upon a 5-year strategic plan where we are charged with really thinking through how do we go from excellent to even more exceptional as a district in creating incredible learning opportunities for our students. And I had the opportunity to go look back at the work session that we did last year with the entire high school faculty. It was really an amazing conversation about, the challenges that they were facing. And I remember asking a question, what would be the transformative idea? And it's like a floodgate of ideas really came out. And what was interesting was that almost all the challenges that teachers, faculty, leaders talked about was facilities issues, and lack of space, whether it was science, English, music. Just this common issue holding the high school back was the inability to have facilities that could have things like a 21st century learning environment for science, engineering, lab-based station work. They talked about large class sizes of 28 and 29 kids. Even in English, the English faculty talked about it hurts the ability to give feedback. We're trying to remedy some of those issues now through creative scheduling, and hopefully we'll ease some of the pressure. But when we have kids in the cafeteria literally having to sit on the floor for lunch, we as a board have to step back and say, how do we solve this problem, especially as potentially our community grows? And so access to facilities, land is something we have to think about 100% of our assets in a way that truly enhances the educational offerings in our district while also preserving Julianne's playground and that legacy forever. You think about what's happening in many other school systems. They're developing 21st century learning environments, career-centered learning. I mean, imagine, a Julianne's pavilion with amazing facilities. Again, we're at the very early stages of a strategic plan, but the point is, I think we as a board both share the urgency to solve this problem, but we also have to think about our assets towards a strategic plan that enhances educational offerings, preserves Julianne's playground, and hopefully preserves a great relationship with the village that, we thought we were working in concert, but we're now hearing messages that the village may proceed unilaterally of starting to dig holes in Julianne's playground to do testing, whether we like it or not. And so I think that is something we hope it doesn't come to that. We just don't think an easement is the right answer for all the reasons that have been articulated.
And I'll be brief. I don't have a ton to add to what all my colleagues have said, other than to say I'm hopeful that, I believe that there is a solution to this problem that would enable the flooding project to move forward, protect Julianne's, and protect and benefit the district. And I hope that the village will keep the lines of communication open to see if we can facilitate a result like that.
Okay. Yeah, and it's very important. We have to stay focused on our primary mission, which is education. So we're going to move forward with our agenda and approve some minutes. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from January 31st.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Yeah, so I think that brings us up to our strategic planning presentation.
Yes. So good evening. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. I know lots of folks were just pleased to get a phone call from me a few minutes ago. So we're looking forward to, lots of folks are looking forward to a lovely snow day tomorrow. But we've got a lot of important business to do here tonight before we all go home and hunker down for the first real snowstorm, I think, that we've had in quite a long time. But really excited tonight to have a guest with us, and that is Monica Brown. She was here from Hazard, Young & Attia, our strategic planning consultant. She has been working with us. She's met with the board leadership and myself and subcommittee of the board just for some of the pre-planning stages, and we're really excited to have her here tonight. Her partner is with us virtually as well. She and Ian are sharing the mini screen over here to the right, and that is Karen, and her last name is escaping me right now. Shaw. Thank you, Karen Shaw, another consultant from HYA. She's not able to be with us in person tonight, but she will be with us in person in the future. And we're thrilled to have them here as we kick off our next round of strategic planning. So this should be a pretty meaty presentation tonight. And tonight's really is the framework of the process. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica to tell us a little bit about herself and about the process. And I know there's going to be some decision points that you'll be looking for some guidance from the board tonight. And Monica will walk us through that. So without any further ado, Monica, welcome, and I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Champ. And thank you. I'm glad you got a chance to meet Karen. She will be working with me, facilitating the creation of the strategic plan. And we look forward to getting to know you better over the next several months. And I want to thank you for having us here. Before we get started, I have a couple people I want to thank. Your board leadership team for being very generous with their time. Thank you so much for meeting with us to help prepare for the session today. To Dr. Champ and her cabinet, Alex, as for communication. You all have been amazing. Thank you so much. Cheryl and I we're texting buddies now. We're going back and forth a great deal. So we are definitely, the goal is to make this a process that you're involved in, that you feel that you can stand behind, that you're finding a path for the district that reflects your desires as a board. You are elected as representatives from the community. The community reflects the values. The community's values are reflected in the schools. And this is a chance to bring all of that together. So again, thank you. I am going to be looking for a lot of input today, many decision points. So in advance, I appreciate you giving me your opinions. I'm hoping we can come to consensus. And let's move on throughout the process. So we've had our pre-planning meetings with both your board leadership and the cabinet. And what we're really doing today is planning for the search. We have some of the information that we need, but we need consensus around it and the ability to move forward. So this session is called the board input session. And that's you all. This is a graphic I like to use when we're talking about strategic planning. And Ian couldn't have given me a better segue to strategic planning. It's taking excellent work and putting it in the exceptional. And there's so many great things going on here at Pelham. That's the before, and so many things that are happening here that are great. The goal of the strategic plan is to make sure that all those good things are headed in the same direction and you're looking at the same goals. There's 4 phases to our plan, and I just realized really quickly, you said introduce yourself, and I've only met half of the board. So just very quickly, I'm a senior associate with HYA. I've been working with the company since 2017 when I retired as the superintendent from Bergen County, New Jersey. I was there for about a decade before I retired, and now I work on superintendent searches and strategic plans with HYA. My partner, Karen, I met her as she was the board president in one of the superintendent searches that I did, and she was an amazing board president who really worked hard to build consensus on her board for some long-term projects and for superintendent. And though she's not serving on the board anymore, I'm really excited to be working with her because she definitely brings a different perspective to our team. Again, 4 phases. We are at the organizational readiness phase right now. This is where we seek your input to put a plan together to move forward. Phase 2, hopefully, will start tomorrow. With the engagement phase. And that's where we start reaching out to people to attend focus groups, get the survey ready to go out, and all of those things to include your community as very important stakeholders who will have input into the strategic plan. And let me be clear, people can have input. You're going to ask your staff, you're going to ask parents, you're going to ask students their input. But the people who make the decision on how the plan is going to look are seated around the table as board members. So the engagement phase is designed for you to get a sense of what the constituents and stakeholders are feeling in the district. I assume that as elected officials, you also hear from stakeholders quite a bit. So you'll be bringing all of that information together when we're setting those strategic priorities. So once we engage everyone, we're going to start focusing on the future, and that's where we're going to set our priorities. We usually recommend about 3 to 5, more than 5, it gets a little jumbled, strategic priorities that you all will come to agreement as a group. And then the implementation and the evaluation, you all, once you have a plan approved by the board, then you're going to be turning to your very capable administrative team to keep you informed on how you are doing reaching your goal. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So that's the implement and evaluate. All right, so you'll see this graphic every time we get together, and eventually that "we are here" arrow is going to keep moving up the pyramid. So right now we are starting the data collection, including stakeholder perceptions, district performance, and other data analysis. So we're gathering a lot of information for you. And when I say we, I'm talking about your team, your administrators. We're going to be getting a lot of information for you. Then we're going to move into a set of workshops where I'll lead you through some protocols to start making sure that the values, mission, and vision align with where you're going. You already have a mission and vision statement, but we'll be looking to revamp that. Maybe keep it exactly the way it is because it's still the priorities. Maybe change it. Again, that will be a decision you'll make collectively. Then we'll come up with the objectives and priorities. Those are those 3 to 5 strategic areas where you'd like to focus. It's at that point that the board will be asked to adopt the plan. So it will be formally adopted as your strategic plan. And once that comes in, you see where the management bar on the left side, that is when your administrators will be working together to suggest to you what indicators should be used to measure growth. And once those are approved by you, then they'll be presenting you with information along the way. And I want to be clear that you all can change your objectives or your the indicators that you measure along the way based on informal agreement. But the plan can only be changed by a vote of the board. So it'll be at that point that your administrative team will be giving you feedback and reports on that implementation, and then you'll look to see, do we need to shift the way we're measuring it? Do we need to add more support for the implementation? But you'll keep track of that as you go forward for the next 5 years. Any questions so far? Just stop me if you have them. So the first phase, well, actually, after the readiness, is we engage the community. So we start off with the board study session. That's this, where we're looking to get your opinions on how to best move forward. Interviews, we're going to ask, Karen and I are going to interview each board member separately, and then interview Dr. Champ and the members of the cabinet. Figure out who the focus groups are, which I'll be asking you about in just a few minutes. Talk about the community survey and the data scan, which is that gathering of information. And just some logistics that, so once we come up with our ideas for tonight, thank in advance, especially I know Alex has been working on this already. He has our communication toolkit and he's been running forward with it. That's what you all will be inviting participants to the focus groups, and we're going to propose to you in just a few minutes what we propose that look like. Collecting the RSVPs, inviting alternates if necessary, arranging for rooms if you'd like them done in person, which I believe that is your intent, and if you need to provide any translators. We will facilitate the groups, take the notes, copious notes, as a qualitative data exercise, and then assemble many reports for you all to view and to use as we are looking to look at that mission and vision and core values. Okay, so first decision point. I've met with your board leadership and I've met with your administrative team, and we have a couple things to offer you as far as focus groups are concerned. These are our recommendations based on lots of discussion, but of course you all get to decide how we move forward. So these focus groups are designed to tap as many different parts of the community as you can to get their feedback on how to see where they want to see the district moving. We get a little bit of data on how they think the district is doing, and then we ask them, what are they looking for in the future? So in your contract, you get 15 groups, and like I said, those can be in person or virtual. I know that many people appreciate the virtual, but we are ready to be here on site too. I have some dates that we've been going over for that. But I want to show you the 15 that I've worked out with Cheryl, and we talked about with the board leadership. They have not agreed to any of these, but we have talked about it briefly. I'm going to show you both slides and then go back and go through them individually. So you have 15 focus groups. Starting off with the parents, we'd like to meet with elementary, middle, and high school parents. In order to make sure that these focus groups represent a diverse group of parents for each, what we are recommending is that for each of the groups, even though there's supposed to be 12 to 15 people, we find that even when you invite 18, sometimes people don't show up, so at least we'll get to 15 if we invite 18. That's what we're thinking. So we would have 6 parents invited by the administrators. Usually the elementary principals would probably get together and say, who are the parents who you think would be most, provide the most input possible. We'd ask the PTA leadership to provide 6 names. Usually those are your most active parents, whether they support or disagree with what's going on in the schools. They're very active. And then to have you as a board choose 6 parents. And that would be, I would recommend that you let your board leadership team recommend those people. And again, you all hear from parents all the time. You might have people who you really believe need to be on these groups. So we would like to do that for both the all 3, elementary, middle, and high school parents. And also from your communications audit, you have a very enthusiastic group of international families who would be a group of possible interest with the participants chosen the same way. Community leaders, these are people who, I know you were talking earlier today about the flooding and working with the town. I've been where you are, and it's a difficult situation. There are people in town who don't necessarily have students in the schools or children in the schools, or have children in the schools but also have other roles: rec department, town council, village council, the town nurse. Whoever those are, you would get to decide. People who represent greater organizations in the community, maybe the Scouts, you were talking about them too. You would choose 6 as a board. PTA, because they're also out in the community, could choose 6, and then your administrators
just
who
to
work
ask a question about it,
Sure.
because by board policy, I'm not sure there's a mechanism for the PTA. Yeah, because when we've had committees in the past, usually you kind of solicit applications and assemble the committees, and I think historically has been the board president and vice president that work with you to kind of finalize that.
Yeah, for committees, yes. For focus groups, we haven't done it that way. I know with the communications audit, Alex, have to help me out there. I think we solicited predominantly from the building administrators. For the parent groups, the prior strategic plan, it was a whole different process structure. So I think it was kind of an open call for focus groups, and I think we were careful to select parents that represented all 6 schools and things of that nature. And this is a slightly different process, but because they're focus groups, it's kind of a one-time opportunity. Same thing I would say when we've done the hiring with HYA. We've kind of different approaches. They did like a parent evening session, a parent morning session, but then when we had smaller focus groups, it was again identified by predominantly building administrators. So this is kind of a variation on a theme of that. Thinking, understanding that the board wants, a hand in making sure that, the broad perspectives are represented there, but also making sure that the formal structures of leadership, that being the building administrators, and, as well as the PTAs, had some voice in this as well. So that's the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
And Mike,
But it's who's deciding at the end of the day.
I mean, ideally, when we talked about this, my impression was that each of those bodies would kind of submit their names, and generally that would be who we would invite in for the focus
Who's
group.
going to send the invitation?
That would go through my office. That would
So
be,
that's what I'm saying. It's a district decision. So it's either it's you, it's me, or it's the full board. That's how I see it.
and I guess I was taking it as the names that were submitted would all be invited. That's how I was interpreting our conversation. So if the board wants to do something different, then,
But the board can approve
be
a
the-
process that says, we're going to pick 6 of the people, and we're going to ask the PTA to give 6 names and the administrators.
Like
There's
nominate.
there's no reason, I don't think, why we couldn't do
I
that.
just want to be clear on the process.
Yeah.
Because I just see board, PTA, admins.
uh,
And
that,
that process could be like, that's not totally clear to me, like how that process works at the end of the day.
So, I mean, I can answer your question. So what we were envisioning, and again, it's your choice how to work it, is that you would contact your administrators and ask them to get to Cheryl. You would contact your PTA leaders. I'll be honest, a lot of times they put themselves on because they're the PTA leaders. They don't get to do a lot, so they might take their executive boards or maybe their board relations chairs or things like that. And then for the administrators, they usually meet during an administrative council meeting and come up with their 6. I envision them all then going to Cheryl's office, and the invitations would come out through Alex. That's how I envision it, but it is, if that's unclear,
I guess to me it feels more like, because this is at such a high level and strategic planning is really one of our primary activities. And because, everybody wanted to be involved in the strategic planning, we're not having like a subcommittee. This feels more like subcommittees that should be more like the regular committee process. So why don't you assemble it, and then you can meet with me and Ian, and we can get feedback from everybody, and just so that everybody's on board.
Michael, could just explain a little, I'm not sure I understand what you're proposing.
That Dr. Champ do this, right, which is, you're gonna have like a spreadsheet with the names.
But actually make a call for
Yeah,
people who
get
want
input
to.
from the PTA, the administrators. I guess we could get input. I mean, my sense of how the board would get input would probably be like a Google form for people to nominate themselves. Is that,
My approach to this is that I was going to reach out to the principals as a group and say, we need 6 elementary parents, 6 middle school parents, 6 high school parents. And then they would talk amongst themselves, give me back the names. PTA council, I would go to the PTA council president and say, look, we're looking for this configuration. Can you work with your leadership and get me, the needed names by this date? And then certainly you as a board then could coordinate to come up with the 6 names by the date as well. Just give those to me.
but wouldn't you
to me,
just
and
send
then we
out
can
an
invite-
email and say, if you want to volunteer for the focus group?
I think, if you don't mind, I think the point was to allow the board to feel as if people who communicate with them often and have many opinions that need to be shared can be tapped in the session also. We can do it any way you like.
No, I do like this process. However, the people that communicate with us often, they communicate with us often. So we've heard from them. So through this process, I would like to tap into those people that may not be out there communicating with us as often, or may just have a different of opinion, which you wouldn't find necessarily if you're always tapping into. My assumption is the PTAs are going to recommend the same people as the principals, because those are the parents they're always seeing in the schools. So
But they may coordinate.
right, I would like
to
to
make
see
sure
a
that there's
process where people could self-select, like, hey, not that, we don't know what response we're going to get, right? It could be overwhelming. I know the last time we went through a process for the 5-year plan was, I believe there was a lot of survey, and people were very active.
There will be surveys.
Right, and
Yes,
replying
we'll do
to the
that too.
survey, so they might be very active in saying, can you pick me for one of these focus groups? Now, I do like that the international families, I haven't seen that before, and I do think we have an influx of, international families in, I think, all of Westchester. I also like the fact that we're engaging the schools, the actual students at the high school and the middle school.
I do think it's important too, and I just say this, and I know there's a lot of different ways to do this. There is some importance to giving the administrators some, some piece, owning some piece of this process. So I want to be sure that that there is still some decision making at that level. And again, they're smart people. They know their communities. They want broad perspective as well. I think they know the spectrum of folks that they deal with as well, and I think they understand the value in getting broad stakeholder opinion through a process like this. So I don't think it would just be the default to the easiest or the most involved. I think they're really thoughtful leaders that would really help to provide a solid group of folks that are going to come with just with a good mindset. I think these are focus groups too. This is, as Monica said, kind of towards the beginning, this is to get a broad sense of what people think and to dig a little bit deeper from a qualitative perspective. It's to come up with themes and ideas. The folks who come to the focus groups are giving us their thoughts as data. That is one piece of data that's going to go into informing part of the conversation. The surveys that she'll talk about is another part of the conversation. There's a data scan that's going to be a third part of it. So there's a lot of different data coming in there.
And the focus groups will only be asked to meet once. They're not part of an ongoing committee who's going to be, that's you all.
A workshop group.
You all, the leadership decided, the entire board would be working on the strategic plan collectively with the cabinet as technical support and working with you. But the focus groups are going to provide data that you can use as a group, but that is their only role. So it is a one-time meeting. You're not asking for a great deal from them. But if you would like, we have done in other districts, and it really is up to you, you can send out that, is anybody interested? It's a little bit more work for Alex because he'll have to keep it going and not you guys just telling them who to invite. So there might be an extra couple days in that process, but I think we do still have the time. If you're comfortable with it, it would be for each of the ones that involve outside, people who aren't working in the schools, it would mean sending out the email to seek interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the board, the PTA, the administration, that's a pretty good cross-section of stakeholders in the district, right? I think as entities to pick the focus group participants, I think those are probably good entities. Someone has to make the decision, right? I think what you're saying, if I can play back to you, what I think you're saying is one step prior to that, you want to solicit, or you want to send an email saying, who wants to raise their hand to be on the long list, right? From which board, PTA, and administration will then sort of curate that list and pick and pick the winners. Is that what you're saying?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, I didn't do a very good job. Are you on board with the board, PTAs, and administration being the sort of the three entities that pick the participants of the focus groups?
And you said to send out like an email.
A call.
Yeah.
Right,
uh-huh.
right.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
those groups have to be involved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
Okay, so I think we're just
Okay,
sending
so-
out
I
an
think
email.
my only
Yeah.
thing is, I'm just saying, we've all committed to spend a lot of time on this process, right? With,
Yes.
There's a lot, yep.
and we all think it's that important. And I don't want to downplay the importance of the focus groups. This is a big chunk of the data that we're going to get. So I'm just saying, I would like to have a final, to make sure that the data we get is going to answer the questions we have, that it's good data and is representative, to just have a final review before those focus groups are finalized.
You're saying to approve the names, basically.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I think we're just what we were thinking was you all as a group would nominate people. Instead, what you're looking at is an all call for people, but then we bring you back the lists of who is recommended and you approve that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
I'm not sure, is that what you were saying?
More or less, yeah.
So just not a call, not having each of those groups find people, or like nominate people, but just the district putting out an all-call email? Is that what you're?
I guess I'm saying both.
Which is what Michael, I think, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're saying that's what we do for the committees, right? We put out a call for people who want to join committees.
I guess what I'm thinking is, with those emails, just like Natalie, you were saying, like some of the same people, or I don't know if you were saying, the PTAs will nominate the same people, or, there might be some overlap. I think with those emails, too, we run the risk of the same people applying via those emails. A lot of people don't check their email. I mean, just on a practical level, emails get missed. So I'm wondering if there's a way, for example, with us, I think the administrators are a little bit different. They know their families and whatnot. But to put some suggestions in place, for example, when we're picking people or when the PTA is suggesting people and asking for, just like a broad representative list of people. So it's, we say it in a way that's very positive, where you're not necessarily always inviting the same people that are involved in everything, so that they really, and I know the PTAs do care about getting lots of people involved and not always the same people who volunteer. So maybe there's a way to encourage that.
Yeah.
I
guess I'm just thinking, okay, at the end of the day, the PTA is going to nominate, maybe some of us nominate people, and the principal. What happens if the same person is nominated as an elementary parent, a high school parent, an international family, the PTA nominated them, the administrator nominated them, we nominated
Yeah, we don't
them.
want that.
Like,
We
I mean,
need-
someone's
more
got to like
nominations.
But
look
that's-
at the
yeah.
final list
Yeah,
and sort
yeah.
of
Oh,
make
I
the
assumed
decision.
that.
And
Yeah,
this
yeah.
This is part of why we're looking for 18 when the group's target size is 15, because we do anticipate some of that. And that's something when the names all flow to my office, that we would see those duplications, and we would move, we would take care of resolving those kinds of things. That's what I was thinking.
Because I would imagine we wouldn't want one person on in multiple
No,
focus groups,
no.
right? If you may have a child in every school, but
No,
you
they'd
should
be
only
in
be
one-
representing
And-
one focus
and
group, right?
What
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
saying is
good
the
point.
way that we've solved that problem with the other committees is that Dr. Champ reviews all the applications, puts the list together, and then we usually met. I think historically, the board president and vice president have met with you and kind of just, if there are any questions like that, like, okay, this person's on multiple things, or,
Right.
how do we balance it out between the different schools and things like that.
D-
So since everybody is wanting to be very involved in the process, should we kind of, just have that final piece of involvement?
Involvement in, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand.
I'm just saying, like, have a meeting
Just
before the
involvement in the
invitations go
final
out and
names.
say- and it could-
Finalize the names kind of thing?
Finalize the
Okay.
So just to make sure I understand, you all, you don't necessarily want to pick 6 yourself or have anyone, you want to send out a general email, allow administratively, we put the groups together and you all have a final say on if you like it.
I don't,
Is that what we said?
that's not what
do
I was
people
thinking.
think?
No, I was thinking along the lines of what you have up here. 6 individuals are suggested by each of these groups, but maybe if I'm understanding you, Michael, correctly, there's a final look at all the names, basically. Is that?
Just to make sure it's balanced.
And I would
or,
assume
we're
maybe
gonna
that
have-
was going to happen anyway.
Is there one more step as well before that, which is an invitation for people to apply? Or
Right, so is it just picking, or are people applying, filling out something? Maybe that is the question?
That's what I was asking. Is the way we had it was the groups pick, say,
Right.
are you interested? And if you're interested, your name goes on a
Right.
list. Then Cheryl and Alex get it all together and then
They get invited.
look at it to make sure there's not duplicates.
Right.
But if you want to do the all call first, we can do that. That's just, it's a slight difference. We're all trying to get a lot of people involved. So I admire you for wanting to get so many people involved. I think we just have to make a decision on the process. That's what we recommended, but we can, Michael.
So do we want to do the all-call?
I think an all-call gets complicated, though, because then you've got 3 groups, the board, the PTA, and the administrators looking at the list, and, like, who's picking the 6 for each of these categories? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if we're doing it sounds like maybe what you want to do, tell me if I'm right or wrong, just really run it the way the committees are run.
I guess
And
with
not
the added
really
piece
have-
of having the PTA and administrator, because the committees, we just put out the email and say, please apply to the committee.
Right.
But this would be putting out an email, please apply if you'd like to participate in the focus groups, and the PTAs would nominate people, and the administrators would nominate people.
Right, it's
I'm not
just
sure how
that-
you feel about this, but then
It's just-
Dr. Champ and Alex would put together the focus groups, and then maybe we have a meeting to finalize it, and then that's the process.
Who's the "we" for that meeting?
Well, with the committees, it's been the board president,
Yeah.
vice president.
Yeah.
I don't have a real strong feeling. I'm willing to do that. If other people want to do that, or we could make a subcommittee for that, or whatever.
Is the concern that we'd get too many overlapping names? Is that it?
I can weed out the overlapping names.
Yeah, so if you're going to do an all call, like I've done this in other districts, and if you do it with the PTA, then the PTA does their all call.
That's what I was wondering.
And like the elementary PTA does their all call, and the middle school PTA does their all call. The admins all get together and they all that information is brought together. The only thing that would be a little different is you all, because if you wanted to do your 6, all that information then goes to Cheryl, Dr. Champ, excuse me, and then she gives you a look at it to make sure that you see a wide representation, and that might just be your leadership. I think that if there's too many steps, we are looking to have the focus groups the first week in March. So we really, especially with the holiday next week coming up, we don't have a lot of time. And if you all want to have a strategic plan by June 5th, we can't really push that out very far. So we also do need to think of timing and how many people need to get together. So if, just say this, easiest way to do it is have Dr. Champ put out an email. Anybody who's interested being in a focus group, let me know. And then she works with Alex and the cabinet to make sure to get elementary parents, middle school parents, and put them all together. Then you all approve them and move forward. That's the quickest way. We were under the impression, though, from our meetings that board members really wanted to have more of a say, so that's why we presented it this way.
Is there an advantage to one way or another, having done this a number
There's
of
not.
times?
You're looking at, you want to make sure that the community members who want to be involved get a chance. So if I'm a parent, I have an elementary school child and a middle school child, I am also a scout leader, and I put my name in, then Dr. Champ might say, well, we're going to put her in the community leader group because we already have too many elementary people. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So she can do that and try to spread it out.
Yeah.
But again, during our conversations with the leadership group, the steering group, I got the impression that you all wanted a little bit more. But if you don't, we can do it that fast way and make sure as many people as possible make up these lists. So what would go out is an email to everybody that says, are you interested in being in a focus group? We have a nice little template. But then what we would do is say, choose the areas where you could fit. So I'd choose elementary, middle, community leader. And then we sift by that, get the lists, and if you'd like to approve it after that, that would be fine.
And we're likely to get more than what we need, right?
Oh, yeah.
So then how does that
yes.
decision get
Well,
made?
that elicits the question.
So when you're
of
not,
why did I
yeah,
not
if you're
get
not
it?
nominating
Yeah.
people,
And this, I think, may be one of the reasons. I know when we did our communications audit, NSPRA actually cautioned against that. I think, somewhat for that reason,
cautioned against,
against an all-call approach.
right.
So, I mean, I know it's been done either way. I mean, it could be as simple as we do the all-call, and then I show the list to the principals and say, decide on your people. PTA, decide on the people. When we call them, that will, there will be opportunities to eliminate the duplication. So I really don't see duplication as a problem.
Yeah.
Just a
And-
matter of, does the board also want to pick 6, or do you want it to be the board is the final say on who's in and who's out? Because that's kind of what I'm hearing, if there's this desire to have the board be the final say on who's selected for the focus groups. It's kind of how I'm hearing that.
I don't see, how are we going to pick 6 people? How would we even do that?
Okay, so then,
Like, how are the 7 of us going to pick 6
how-
people? Yeah,
I mean,
I don't,
are we going to have an executive session and I just don't understand. I don't understand.
you would have to figure that out.
who
So if
would
you're not willing to
decide?
do that, then we move on. Okay? But the other thing, you are right about doing an all-call. Whenever you put an all-call out, and people raise their hand and they don't get chosen, that's the interaction they've had with you. So the tapping eliminates that, but it does also then could garner, this is my favorite person, this is your favorite person.
Right.
So again, you have to balance out how you want this to be seen in the community. And if you do believe that an all-call would cause more problems than the solutions, then that's when you go into the appointment.
right. I mean, Michael, to your point, I could see it being, I was thinking the same thing, like, how do we, as the board, pick 6 people for each of these groups? It makes a lot more sense from the PTA standpoint, just because they are they are with the families, they're in the schools, they know, their communities. I don't know how we would pick.
What about then if we did eight from the principals, 8 from the PTAs? So now each group, and then the final list then comes to the board for approval. It's taken out the board having to select, because
Yeah.
to your point,
Yeah.
15 was really the target. We were going 9 because I was thinking the 6 schools times 3
Yeah.
groups. That math didn't actually work itself out.
I think it makes
I thought
sense
about
to
it.
take the board out of
Yeah.
choosing parents. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. All right, so just to reiterate, the PTA is going to be, we're going to reach out to the PTA to get their input. The administrators are going to get their input. Then you all are going to see the final and nod or say yay or nay. Does that sound good?
The only concern I have is saying it's 9 and 9 are exact numbers, like not leaving, because what we had discussed in the meeting was nominate, not kind of like appoint. So making it like
Okay.
you get 9 picks, you get 9 picks, rather than you're kind of nominating people, and for the reasons that we discussed of balance and duplicates and all that, like I think there needs to be like a little flexibility.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. I don't, we've kind of come back around, full circle, I think. So just to, I just want to be clear, I don't want to go down a road that you're not comfortable with. So you are, when I say tap, that is nominate, but I'm saying I'd ask the person if they want it. So it's a little bit different than just nominating someone. So if the administrators did that and the PTA did it, and Dr. Champ organized the list, and then you all saw it and gave the final nod, that we typically try to get between 12 and 15 in every focus group. I think if you're nominating 16 to 18 people, we will get our 12 to 15.
And when you say give the final nod, what does that?
That's up to you. That's up to you. If you want to do it with, you just sit with Dr. Champ, as has been done for other committees, that's absolutely fine. If you think the rest of the group would like a say, please jump in. But
Well, we can't really do it in a public meeting to discuss specific, like, right, that's not,
It wouldn't be
But
exec
e-
session. I
Yeah.
think
Each of us could give Michael and Dr. Champ their feedback on the list, and then you two could, or you two and Ian, however you wanted to do it, could then have a meeting to talk about it with input from us that wasn't group input, it was just one-off input. I think from my perspective, I'm less concerned about the duplicates, because I think that'll work itself out. I think we just, particularly with the elementary schools, making sure that we have voices from everywhere, which I think everyone has a desire for, but that seems like the more important thing from my perspective.
Yeah, and even when we get into middle school and high school, we usually try to make sure that we also still represent the
Yeah.
different corners of the
Totally.
community as they move up. Okay, so what I'm hearing
So-
is 8 principals tapping 8 folks, PTAs tapping 8 folks, them submitting the names to me, we'll assemble them, eliminate duplicates, put together lists, share them with the full board. You give feedback to Michael and Ian, and then I will meet with them, and they will sign off on final selections.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
Works for me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Sorry, what about when someone comes and says, I really wanted to do this? They're gonna come like the day before we present the final product. They're gonna come and say, I really wanted to do this. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't have the opportunity to participate or something like
Well, if I could jump in there for just a second, we are also going to be doing a survey that comes with an announcement that the board is starting the strategic planning process. We'd like everyone's voice to be heard. Please take this survey. So they will know. They won't, if they're checking email, they won't be surprised that the actual process is going on.
What if we sent an email and said, this focus group thing is happening. If you're interested in participating, speak to your principal and PTA.
That's in essence the all-call.
Right, and then with an all-call, how do you narrow that down? Given the
Well,
timeline, we
in-
also,
In Michael's proposal, the PTA and administrators get to deal with
Yeah.
Yes.
deciding how to call it down, for better or worse.
I'm still trying to understand that process. So if there's an all-call, the administrators in the PTA are not getting together to choose then people, like they're, how would
So
that
what would
work?
have to happen is then, that's why I'm talking about extra steps. You have an all-call, then that information has to be disaggregated and sent to the different groups to then make the decisions, to then come together to the admin team to put together, to then go to the board to make a decision. I'm not sure we're going to make it in 2 weeks.
And I guess how does that, yeah, so that interim step is important, but then which names would go to the PTA? Like, I could see which names go to the elementary and the middle and the high school and the community, but then the PTAs, I guess, would just get all the names from their school? Is that what we're,
Yeah, we could work out the details of that, but you do risk more duplication.
right?
Because we'd probably give the full list, the full elementary parent list to the PTAs and the full elementary parent list to the buildings.
Right.
And then they would pick their people, they would submit them, there probably would be duplication, so there'd be some back and forth. So yeah, it would just take longer to distill that down, which maybe to Monica's point, it wouldn't be able to turn it around quite as quick. But we could, if that's the desire for a broad all-call as the foundation, we can navigate through that.
But
it
whatever it
doesn't
is, we
answer the
do have to
question of-
decide, yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
it-
this is
still-
a decision point
yeah.
that we need.
Well, maybe it isn't an all-call, but just transparency around what the process is and in our board wrap-up or something and saying, we are doing the focus. We've already gotten emails asking about
Yeah.
what's going to happen. So I guess as long as we're transparent and people know, the PTA and principals are going to be nominating people.
To then be reviewed and approved by the board, and
Yeah.
as we are representatives of the community, so I think.
And I guess we're not saying speak to your PTA and principal, but it's like,
I
would
think
be
it
the
kind of-
implication, like if you actually want to do this, you need to get your name in the hat somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I think saying it or not, if you're saying that, if you're communicating to everyone that this is happening and you're saying where those nominations are coming from, you're in essence doing an all-call. Even if it's not directly responded back to the same central place, it would definitely create the issue of why did I get picked, why did I not get picked, and now all the principals have to deal with that, and now all the PTAs do as well, so.
I guess
that
But
would
if
be
the
the
board
Might
is
that happen
if the
then?
board has the final review, they can blame us. Right?
Unless their name didn't make it from the building level to the district level.
Or you can always
Right.
blame the consultant. That's always a good plan.
I think it sounds like it comes down to groups, these different groups, let's say, picking individuals, using their judgment to pick individuals that represent the community versus people stepping up to nominate themselves.
self-selecting.
Self-selecting and filling out something that says why they should be picked.
Which is what they do on the
With the
for
committees.
committees, yeah.
And it sounds like we don't have a lot of time to do the latter. So I guess it comes down to a little bit of trust of the different groups to pick people that represent the community at large and not only the people who, look, as someone who's been very involved from when my kids were little, not always picking the same people who volunteer no matter what they're doing. Yeah. You know, and I think we can stress that to the PTAs, and I think they're on board with that because I know there's always a push to get more people involved and not have the same faces all the time. And again, having been one of those faces, I get it.
We do have several more decisions to make, so I just wanted, are we not doing the all call, or we're doing the all
That's
call?
really the last piece. All call or no all call?
All call or no all call? That's all I need.
I say no all call, but talking about what the process we're going through is, and we've already talked about that, right? That people want to know how this is going down.
Yep, got the dashboard ready for you in a bit, and Alex is working with me to do a release on the survey, which will give all the information. So yes, we will make sure people know if they
Yeah.
want to know.
Do we want to talk any more about the specific focus groups?
We can.
I
So
mean,
you,
I do like I said, the international, the high school students, the middle school students. I do like some of the other focus groups that are not necessarily what we will see when you put out a survey, because it's usually only parents. And like I said, my only worry would be, it's always a lot of the same parents that come to us, and I love them, trust me. I love those parents who always give us their opinion. I just want not just those parents, but I want other parents who may not have a lot of time to give, but will make time for this very important effort that we're trying to make.
The one group that I was wondering about that I didn't see was special ed parents. And I don't know if that was intentional or how you guys thought about that.
as we were brainstorming, special ed parents did come up. The thought was that they could be in all of the other parent groups, and that with the curriculum coordinators and directors and supervisors, that the programs themselves would be discussed, and thoughts as far as the future would be. So we had to kind of make decisions. I mean, that could definitely be one. You just have to lose one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the parent experience with the IEP process is like a pretty important one. I'd like to find a way to include that if we can. I'm not sure what.
Could you go back to the first
Sure.
page?
I mean,
You could combine some.
yeah, I was thinking about group 13 felt like there are a lot of school staff in various roles who are going to have focus groups already, and whether there's a way to either combine them or feel like we're getting their feedback from other groups.
Well, so the clerical, custodial, and monitors group, typically they have different thoughts on the district because of their perspective. Now, what you could do is do, instead of elementary teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, you would do elementary staff, middle school staff, high school staff. People who are more than one school would not be, they'd have to choose, or we would choose based on, but yes, you could combine those. Another one that you could combine is the curriculum directors and staff developers and your district supervisors. That's another group that could be combined based on your size. We could probably get to 15 to 18 in one group with that. There was some discussion at our initial meeting about the need to make sure that curriculum disciplines are represented. So we're thinking in terms of academic progress within the disciplines. So that's why we tried to separate those. But we definitely can get that information. And by the way, these are just like we talked about before. This is one piece of data that you will use. So we'll use a lot of other data too. And I know that you're going to get a lot of discipline-specific data when we start looking at student achievement scores, because those are done in discipline-specific ways.
I mean, I don't know, Dr. Champ, what you think, but 11 and 15 seem to me like those are probably like 5 or less in each group right now.
So a couple thoughts on that. we separated them out because we were, in planning, Michael had, in particular, had raised some desire to see some focus on academics. So
Yeah.
we tried to make sure that that was very present. We separated out the coordinators and staff developers who are teacher line from the directors, supervisors who are administrative line, because sometimes the conversations can be
see.
very different.
Yeah.
So, that being said, we certainly could, we could absorb the curriculum coordinators, staff developers back in with the teacher groups. Elementary, those are predominantly middle school highs, well, actually, middle school high, we could redistribute them. So that's 11, we could redistribute across 8, 9, or 10, and 10. Monica's idea about absorbing 13, the clerical custodial, instead of elementary teachers, we could absorb those as staff, too.
Right.
I think either one of those, would still give the opportunity for people's voices to be heard and the issues raised in those groups.
And Sid, and I know you mentioned having one, I guess, a special ed focus group, but would it make any sense, or would you be okay if, like, not just pulling from the PTA, but also asking SEPTA to provide names?
I don't think we could ask PTA for special ed. That would get into some
Okay.
FERPA. Yeah, I don't think we can ask them to point at each other, but your special ed parent group would be the one.
Yeah.
Well, I think she was suggesting that the special ed PTA
Yeah.
would,
Exactly.
Right, well,
would nominate some people.
Exactly. I wouldn't go to your regular PTA for that. So I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
Some school, and Monica, do all schools have middle school students?
Nope.
That was another group that I love the
And
student
you could
voice in
also
it,
take,
but that
you
is
could also take your
not as
counselors,
common.
social workers, and psychologists and put them back in their staff with the teachers, again, to make that extra room.
The other thing we had talked about was like more discipline specific, like a STEM focus group and a humanities focus group.
We just couldn't fit them in the 15 if you wanted to get all these others. So we can do whatever 15 you want, but we just have to eliminate some to get those.
Do people think it's important to focus on STEM and humanities, or?
But who would you be
But I
choosing
think it would have to, just looking at the list, because I agree it's important, but I think that could be captured in the 15 that we have. Yeah. But I do think, like Sid said, I do think having possibly a special ed focus group is important.
Okay. Do I see consensus nod? This is not a vote, it's just a consensus nod?
Yeah.
Okay, and then are you, I'm trying to see what would be the best one to,
I almost think 11.
11? Okay, put those back in with teachers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think if that's just something that you and Karen can be attentive to as
Mhm.
you do the focus groups,
Absolutely.
that you do have some teacher leadership in there in the content areas.
Got it.
And that could be part of what the admins do in their selection process.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. That's very true.
Absolutely.
Yep. Maybe
Okay.
Dr. Bowman can probably exercise a little pressure to make sure that those
And the good thing
curriculum
is,
folks are
Voluntold.
involved.
it's going to be
Voluntold.
one meeting. It's not a huge commitment. So I think
Right.
that people, well, I don't think we'll have too many troubles. Okay, next topic. I don't want to, I know you all are getting home get ready for the snowstorm. But we do need to disaggregate the data for the survey. We can disaggregate it to up to 6 groups. Again, the leadership, and then with the cabinet. I definitely think you should have a parent or guardian group. A student group is very important. That's why we're all here, is to make sure that the schools are heading in the direction that is good for them. The faculty and instructional staff, we like to parse out your certificated staff, people who are teaching, counseling, advising, and your support staff. A lot of times you can see some interesting statistics for those. Administration, and then community members. And these are people who don't have children currently enrolled in the district. That is our recommendation. Is there anything that you see missing, or? So as I go to take the survey, I choose one, and people will say, well, I'm a parent and I'm a teacher. Then you take, the instructions say, pick the one from which you're going to give your opinion. Okay?
This makes sense to me, and 3 seems aligned with what we just decided on the focus group also.
Excellent. Great.
And-
Okay.
and would-
One
and
question,
would
Monica.
students-
How do you
would
reach number
students
6?
be disaggregated?
Oh,
between middle
Ian
and high
has
school?
something.
Ian, did you have
Oh,
something?
would students be disaggregated between middle and high school?
Not in this framework. You'd have to lose a group to do that.
Okay.
Oh, and I was saying, how do you reach number 6?
How do we reach number 6? Thank you. I apologize.
That's okay.
So that is when your amazing communications director and I work together to put this everywhere. We ask the village to put it on their website. We send it out to as many emails as we have access to. If we have alumni email lists, we work, however we get out information for like, come vote on something is the same people we get to for this. Now, will it get to everyone? We'll also have it on, I will recommend that it be on your website homepage. Take our survey.
We're also looking to do a postcard mailed to all homes with a QR code, I believe, right?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
To
if
take
you
them right to the survey.
want me to just speak on that a little bit, that was one of the groups, obviously during the communications audit, that was definitely the hardest to reach, and that's not unique to us. So a couple things that we were able to do that did generate some responses and got us closer to that target goal was reaching out to as many community groups as we can, asking them to pass it out through their emails. I attended the Senior Citizens Club meeting. We distributed the paper surveys there. So a lot of that sort of like hit the ground and do the best we can to generate as many responses as possible. And then, as Dr. Champ mentioned, we're in the process of designing a postcard that will mail to every home in Pelham with a QR code linking to the survey, which is something we actually didn't do as part of the communications audit, but we have done in the past with strategic planning. So hopefully that will help as well. And the timing of that actually is shaping out. We think that it'll probably start to hit toward the end of the proposed survey window, which will be a great chance as sort of a last reminder for everybody involved to take the survey. So hopefully that will help generate responses across the board.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I've never worked with a board who did that, and I think I'm excited to see what that'll draw in as far as names. Move on. General consensus, I'm seeing nodding. I like that. Okay. Oh, this is where we usually spend a lot of time, so maybe I've tired you out. Okay, so I think you have a handout for the calendar.
I did not get to print that, but
Okay.
actually on tonight's agenda, I did share the draft calendar at our last board meeting. So the board did see that. We talked a bit about it. On the agenda for tonight is an adjustment to a revised board meeting calendar. And with that, I took the document from HYA with the proposed dates that we aligned with our already existing board meetings. I think we added one more in there. And proposed basically a 3:30 start on several of the board meeting dates. So that we could do like a 3:30 to 6:30 focus work session on strategic planning, working dinner, and then transition to our regular board meeting. And there's a little bit of variability to the start times because there's some budget work sessions in there too. So there might be a couple strategic planning work session followed by budget work session nights, but.
Which your budget reflects your strategic goals, so
Exactly.
your
It's kind of
priorities.
perfectly aligned, so.
And I want to thank you all for coming up and working with us for those dates. The other option is to do it on Saturdays for 6 hours at a time. And I'm glad you all are taking it in shorter bites. I think that it'll give you a chance to go through some protocols, think about some things, and then have a little time between needing to make decisions. So I think that'll work out very well. Okay, so you all have it.
Are these the same, is this the same update that we received that Valerie sent out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I'd put one in your weekly update, but then we
Right.
found an error, so yeah, so Valerie had sent that
Okay.
out with the updates.
Okay.
That is actually, Board Docs has woken back up. So that is actually on the agenda.
It is.
6.1 is the revised board meeting dates. And within that, highlighted in yellow, are the changes to.
Do you want me to get it up, or do they all
no,
have it?
No,
Okay.
everyone should have it. So we're basically, what we've got, tonight's meeting, obviously, was the start of this. March 20th, 3:30 start time. April 3rd, 3:30 start time. April 17th, 3:30 start time. April 30th is the one-off that was an additional meeting. It was actually in there, and then we changed, now it's back. Either way, it's, actually, you know what, and Valerie, there, we've got it says 6:30, that one should be 7. Tuesday, April 30th, should be 7 o'clock. That's just a strategic planning work session. So we'll make that adjustment on the one that we vote on. And then May 8th, 3:30 start. And I think that should get us, that should parallel, Monica, what we had talked about on the planning sheet.
Right, and that we have different decision-making points, and I think that'll work out really well for not putting too much in one session.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, okay. Wow, that was fast. All right. Just to let you know, so we're going to give you a lot of information when we start our work on looking at our strategic priorities. We're going to give you the survey data, which is everybody who'll answer. We're going to give you the focus group data, which will be from the focus groups. We'll give you the interview data, because we'll be interviewing each one of you. And we'll give you data on many things that we're going to be working with the district to give us. Things like, we already have your existing plan, the communications audit. If I think you have some climate survey data. We'll be heavy in the student achievement data. And thank you in advance, Cabinet, for helping me gather all that information. And there's just some other, but I just want to let you know that you're going to receive many points of data before you're asked to start to focus on priorities for the future. So the first things that we'll be doing is looking at data, the first few workshops, then we'll be pursuing those strategic priorities and coming to consensus on the 3 to 5 that make the most sense for Pelham. Okay.
So that's all, that's it for the data scan?
No, we can do more.
It's a sample.
Okay.
Those are just samples of things. If there's other reports that you think should be a part of it, let us know and we'll gather them for you. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Because we did a whole thing about what excellence means for Pelham.
Yeah,
That
we
was
can
last
include
year.
that. We can include that.
That's great. That'll be a good starting point.
The demographic study, is that our old one, or is it the
No, we'll
new
do the
one we're
new one.
conducting?
That one, that's, we got the results last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Print out shortly.
Excellent. The more recent, the better.
Yeah, that's one of our challenges. We don't yet have our building condition survey for the new one. The one we have is, 9 years old at this point? It was before we had a new school, so that would not be relevant, but the demographic we just got, so that will be helpful.
How will we incorporate a facilities plan into this?
You're saying you don't have a facilities plan now?
Not yet.
No, our current one is 9 years old. It's not-
Okay, so we would probably still use that as a start, just to see what was going on back then. Just based on the conversation that I heard earlier today, I bet some of the needs for facilities will come out in all of the different data points that we pick up. I can't give you a plan that's not been created, but what you can do is we can talk about the issue, and it may become a strategic priority.
Yep.
So we're going to have the building condition plan by the end of,
Yes, we hope to have that within the next 2 months.
Okay.
We hope to have a draft of that, share with First Facilities Committee, but we hope to have that shortly.
And as soon as you have that it's okay to use with the whole group, just remember the group will be, even if it's not a published, if we can just use it as an informational, that would be great. Especially if that's a concern, an ongoing concern that you want to make sure is addressed in the strategic plan.
And then, you know, so a lot of districts have kind of a curriculum piece, finance and facilities, and then sometimes like a staff development, kind of an HR piece.
Those are three very common priorities that eventually come to the surface. You are correct.
So do we have any data that needs to go into for like the HR piece, or what kinds of things do people look at for that?
That's a good question. We can ask Dr. Garcia if probably want some staffing reports, any open positions, historically open. Busing here? Yes. No busing. No. Lucky. All right. So those types of things we can work with. Dr. Garcia, if you're interested. Absolutely.
We have a National School of Character. I know I met with Ms. Sabia once, and there was a big packet about that.
There's usually an extensive application process.
Yeah.
So if you
And our IB reauthorization documents.
okay.
Maybe you've got all this, you've got a list of all this stuff, or?
Yeah, I've got a lot of the same materials that I've given to to the board during retreats and such.
Or even I'm not sure if we mentioned this already, the tri-state work. Yeah.
Okay.
And Monica, too, just so we understand the level, because this is already, the pile is about this big at the moment.
Notice I said, so you have time in between.
The IB application, I believe, was 750 pages alone.
I would,
What level of data is useful to the process?
whatever you can process in an appropriate amount of time. So I think that I don't think 750 pages is going to, but maybe an executive summary if there's one at the beginning or the end. This is work on you. So I would just make sure that you're comfortable with that.
So you're not reading this?
I'm reading it too.
Oh, okay.
But that's my job. You guys have other jobs.
No,
So
that's
I
what I'm
just wanna be
thinking.
clear
You're gonna read it and kind of summarize it or process
I
it
won't
in
provide
some way.
it. I won't provide an executive summary that can be published, but I will be reading it just so I have an idea of what you all are, what's going on.
But we're reading these. This is.
If
part
you
of
say that it's part of that data scan,
then
you're
this
gonna
is what
be
we're
expected
taking
to
in.
read it.
Yep, yep.
So,
Yep.
okay. Last but not least, I just wanted to show you it might have logged me out already. It did. I think that's it. So we're working on a strategic dashboard. Now, you all can decide whether or not this is just communication between me and you all, or Karen and I, excuse me, and you all, or some districts have put this out. Some districts have put this out on their website as a link to show the public where they're going, where they are in the process of the strategic planning. So I just wanted to, you don't have to make a decision on that right now, but if you decide to use it, it's a description, basically what I gave you all earlier, some information on the district that I would work with Alex to make sure is what you wanted out. Once you have indicators, what I've just put here are some of the characteristics that you all, that I found online. But once you all decide on more information together, what you're looking at, this is the important part, that if you decide this tracks the process now, but if you decide to keep this afterwards, it's where you'd put your strategies that you're working on and how you're doing on them. So for example, if for the process, what I've put on here is phase 1, organizational readiness. And there are 2 strategies that we've done. One is the virtual introduction meeting with the associates and the leadership. And tonight is the board input study session. So I would mark that as complete. So at any point in time, you could see where we are in the process. So phase 2, the inclusive engagement, you would, the community engagement plan, which is all that information I just had on those screens with the groups and the, you would get that. And you can at any time check to see where we are in the process. However, once the plan is adopted, this would become the strategies that your administrators and teachers are all working on, and you keep track of their progress. It is up to you, but I just wanted you to see what it would look like if you wanted to link it as part of your contract with HYA. This can be up for 6 months after the strategic plan, and then you can either build your own or there's a maintenance fee, but it would be up to you. But for 6 months, you could be publishing this. You could use it as an internal communication tool where your administrators tell you how far you are moving toward all your goals, or it could be something that you shared with the public. So I just wanted to introduce that now. We'll talk about that more as we go, but be thinking about if that's something you'd want for your community to see, or if you just want to work, just to have that as an internal communications tool. Are there any questions about that? Or any thoughts?
Generally err on the side of more transparency rather than less. That's my
Is that an agreement widespread?
Yeah, I'm definitely supportive of that for sure.
Okay.
I want to understand the second piece. So once the
So right now, this dashboard represents the process of strategic planning.
Right.
After the plan is done, it would represent the plan. So it would start off with your mission, your vision, your core values. Then there'd be these are our priorities. There'd be and then what your 3 to 5 major priorities are. Right. Like I said, you could go with less or more, but I recommend 3 to 5. Michael already said what a lot of districts go down for 3, but go down the road for 3. But again, it will be based on your work together and the consensus you built. But what's really important is it's a place where you can keep track as a board member as to how is it being measured at any given time. And then if you decide to open it up, that part to the community, they can keep track. So for example, if you decide as a group that you really need to look at your facilities as far as spacing, then there might be some data that's being collected by your administrators. There might be some feasibility studies that are presented, and you want them presented by a certain date. You would have indicators that you choose based on what the administrators are going to give you input on what they think those should be to achieve the goals. So there'd be different buttons up at the top, but you could either open it up or not.
Do you typically so for this the page that you were just on,
Strategies.
yeah,
Got it.
when you have like status of 100% for something, do you typically have like a link to the output from that? So someone who from the community wanted to see the focus group report, would that show up as like we finished the focus groups and produced a report, and then there is a link to it, or not necessarily?
Exactly. There could be. Absolutely. So let's say we get the timeline finalized. Once I get, just to make sure our dates are the same, then if they clicked on details, they could see that it's complete or not. But we could also do a link so they could actually see the timeline.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if we can do that.
And you think it's good to have it public?
I think that seemed to be where people's heads were at, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. So Alex and I will be working on that. And then it'll just be a link from your website. So they'll just pull it down, strategic planning. It'll go to this, which is our parent company and analytic, the ECHO group. But again, it'll be yours from the time the plan ends, 6 months, it's all yours, and you can decide to keep it going or not, or just build your own. Questions? I do think we have gotten to the end of my decision-making requests. Are there any other questions, comments, moving forward? We want to make sure you're comfortable with the process. I look forward to working with you all and gathering your input along the way.
I'm sorry. I'm like that kid in class who like asks a question
That
right at the
in
end.
grad school, when you say any questions?
Yeah. Sorry. Can you go back to that slide that had the pyramid on it?
Yes. Just give me one.
Remember the one I was talking about?
Give me 1 second because I got to go back in here.
Yeah. It's like maybe your second slide or third slide.
This one.
Yes. So today we have authentic learning, cultural competency, and the whole child. Those 3 pillars, where do they sit in this pyramid? Are they in the value, mission, vision piece or the objectives and priorities piece?
What are these again?
Our current
Our
strategic
current
plan.
strategic.
Our 3
Your,
main
probably
pillars.
your priorities. I'm going to guess those are here. You would adopt those. These are broad, and they inform this. I'm sorry, I know I'm not talking about it.
Okay, thanks. For those listening who couldn't hear, it's in the second, in the objectives and priorities layer.
That's where I would put those.
And so just to follow up on it, so when we adopt the objectives and priorities, what does that look like? Is that,
It will look,
how many pages is that?
it's typically 3 pages, 1 for each, or 3 to 5.
Uh-huh.
And then once you decide on these are where we want to focus, this is where we want to show growth and we're moving in this direction, then what you do is you turn it over to your administrative team, and I think we have scheduled July 1st and 2nd for the team to meet, because they're going to be the people who ultimately have to demonstrate achievement of these goals and objectives. So they'll then recommend to you how they'd like to measure it and demonstrate measurement, and that's where it gets to the management. You all agree to that, hopefully, it all works together, and then they start reporting on it periodically. You decide, do you want it quarterly, do you want it monthly, depending on what the indicators are. And you want to make sure, let me give you an example. If you want to raise your math scores, then you all aren't necessarily educators to know how to do that, but then your administrators get together and they're like, we want to do this tutoring program, and we want to offer, we want to make sure to get this staff development for our teachers. We want to do a benchmark assessment. Whatever those indicators are, then you all look at that and say, yeah, that'll demonstrate growth toward this objective, and then they start measuring. That's the management piece. Now, you all can change your strategic focus at any time, your goals, and your priorities and objectives, but that would take a vote of the board. But things can change. I mean, COVID hit and a lot of strategic plans changed. Technology went way up there on the list for many. So again, things can happen, but short of any massive change, you're telling your administrators, your teachers, everyone working in the district that these are the things we want you to focus on. These are the things that are important.
And is it, you said 3 to 5. Right now we have three pillars. Is there a typical number or?
Yeah, if you go more, like I said, if you go more than 5, it starts to get confusing because
That's too
people
many.
lose focus.
Yeah, I think it's too many. Yeah.
Have I seen boards do it? Yes. It makes the graphics a little harder, but
Yes.
we figure it out. It is your plan. And I want to be clear about that the whole time. And I think you're getting the impression from me, and Karen is the same way. We want your input, ask your questions. This has got to be something that you can stand behind. So it's important that you really feel and are a part of the process and make sure that your goals, your ideas. You've been elected by your constituents to make sure the schools are run well and are moving in the direction, the collective direction, the values of the community. So it's an important job. It's a long job, but it's important. And I do really appreciate your time tonight and in advance for all the time we'll spend together. I will tell you that Karen and I will try to make it as interactive as possible with lots of things to do. We split things up, come together. The boards we've worked with in the past, many of them say they're a stronger board at the end because they understand one another better and they've come to consensus on where they want to move. So it can bring a board together too, and I hope it does for you all. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right.
Sorry,
we'll
I
get to
just,
That's
okay,
okay.
sorry, just to go back to the objectives and priorities. So each one is like one page, and that has like some bullets on it or sub points, or what do you envision that look like?
It can look any way you would like it to look, but you're going to have 3 to 5 broad areas. It can't have too much under it because you've got to ask your administrators how to get there. What you're trying to show them is where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be so big that there's no way to show you get there. Do you know what the 3 to 5 are bigger ideas. Don't want to get too, but again, we'll go through it. You'll have to be comfortable with however they're stated.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this now because it's getting late, but as I think about the last couple strategic plans, which I wasn't involved with, but I did look at, it feels like there's been a progression towards sort of maintaining high-level priorities, but then each year, each sort of study seems to like drill down a little more detail underneath. So when I think of like, if you had a priority of academic excellence, you might want to have 3 targets under that that are like, I don't know, double math proficiency in the next 5 years, or like tangible goals related to that priority. And then you might work with the administration for how are we going to implement and reach those goals. That's how I think about it, at least. I don't know if that's how you guys
That's
typically implement
how
it.
runs. I just want to be clear, though. You don't want to, if you have, academic success, that could be very broad.
Right.
And you have to be careful of how many ways you measure that.
Right.
So you have to choose the ways you want to measure that, and that is an important part of the process.
Yep.
So you're saying goal area and then some measurement.
For example, I've seen some districts go with STEM specific as our goal area, but then student achievement more broadly, even as a second goal area. So again, it depends on how you all come together with your thinking. You want them to be broad enough that everyone in the organization can feel that they are part of achieving it, not just the first grade teachers or just the administrators. The goal for those 3 to 5, I always tell the story when John Kennedy visited, I think it was Cape Canaveral, and he was walking through with his entourage, and he looked at a custodian and he said, "What are you doing here? What's your job?" And he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." Because even as a custodian, he knew that was the mission of our organization. So what I'm trying to say is you want everybody to be able to find themselves somewhere in your goals in order to bring everybody together.
Going once.
I don't want to run away.
Ready to
Going
talk budget?
twice.
I'm going to let you all talk about budget, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Monica, thank you so much.
Oh,
And
you're
Karen, I know
welcome.
she's
Thank
been
you.
tuned in listening. We look forward to meeting her in person.
Yes.
All right.
And I know you all will get to know and appreciate Karen, but in person when she's
Yes.
I will be there in person next time I meet all of you. Thank you so much. Look forward to meeting all of you in person.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Okay. All right.
So next, overview of superintendent's budget proposal.
Okay, I'm going to do a little text swapping here. And Alex for getting things set up. Part two of this evening's main event. Tonight, I'm pleased to present to you the first iteration, just an overview tonight of the budget for this year. Thanks to Jim Rickey, to Jackie Vigil, and everyone in the business office who've done just a tremendous job of assembling, working with us to assemble and to craft this budget, really double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking every little thing, making adjustments along the way. Thank you to our administrative team too as well, who's been deeply involved in proposals and preparing for this presentation tonight. Our work is not done. I mean, this is an iterative process, so what we have for you tonight is really is the budget approval. But those of you who've been on the board know that there's usually some iteration from this point in time, some adjustments, some ins and outs as we get more specific information, as we make adjustments. So there will be some, which is why we don't go into much detail right now. This is broad brushes, top level overview. And as we go through the line by line budget review, that's really where you really get to see how the budget is honed. But that being said, we're ready to dive into it tonight. So as the board is very aware, our goals for the year really are these, and we've come back to these goals multiple times throughout the year. And I know that we met back in fall. The board had asked for an early budget discussion. So back in October, we did have that early budget discussion. And at the board meeting, the board provided guidance to us that we should look to maintain current levels of programming while we await the strategic planning process. So we definitely took that into account in planning this budget. With that in mind, what you're seeing tonight does not look to really add or significantly change any programs from the past. It really is kind of to hold things steady where we are, continue to deepen our implementation, but not to really to come forward with some significant new ideas, recognizing that, as we just finished discussing earlier, that we will be heading into strategic planning and want to be poised and ready for that. So instead, this budget is built with the idea of preserving the rich array of academic programs and supports for our students that have led us to become a state and nationally recognized school district with the positive student outcomes that we have discussed at length throughout this year. As we get into the budget process, these are the categories that you'll be seeing and that we'll be going through over the course of the next, probably I think we've laid it out over the next 3 budget meetings. We're doing spreading the line by line over 3 evenings, so we'll be inviting the administrators to come and to highlight those areas of their particular department. So we'll be covering these general areas that make up the expenditure side of the category of the budget, as well as the revenue side of the budget. We'll be talking a little bit more about those momentarily. One thing I will say, and it's probably tipping the hat on an upcoming slide, but I know that I shared with the board and we'll be sharing with the community very soon. We'll be asking folks if they're interested to help us with some advocacy around the foundation aid formula. I think we all know property taxes are the biggest source of our revenue, and that has been the case for Pelham. We don't have a lot of business non-homestead business in the community. So the bulk of our property taxes, generally in the average 80 to 85% of our taxes, tend to come from our homeowners. State aid over the last few years has thankfully increased for us. The state and folks who have been involved in our advocacy efforts in prior years, remember, we were underfunded on the foundation aid formula for many years. We were funded at only about 51%. And so the governor committed to full funding of that formula over the past 3 years. So we've seen significant increases in foundation aid over those 3 years, which enabled us in those past 3 budgets to build program that we hadn't been able to build before, thanks to that foundation aid. If you've looked at the news recently, you know that when the governor launched her budget, 45% of the districts in the state received a cut in foundation aid, which was, other than the gap elimination, which was back in the recession of 2008-9, districts generally could count on foundation aid at least remaining the same. There had been a hold harmless provision in place for a long time that even districts who maybe were seeing decreases in enrollment, other factors that might theoretically qualify for them for less money under the funding of the foundation aid, they were kept whole. They were never, that money was not taken away. They were just in this save harmless or held harmless status. So that was a big piece of what happened this year. The governor did not honor that hold harmless. So districts lost, in many cases, it could be 100,000, couple 100,000, to as much as our neighbor in Mount Vernon. Theirs was reduced by 3 million this year. So districts really were grappling with how do they handle this now, given that we have a tax cap, given that we're limited in what fund we can raise through the tax levy. Thankfully, we were not impacted by that. We did receive a slight increase in foundation aid, I think just under $500,000 totally. But it certainly gives us pause. So we will be launching an advocacy campaign in the next week or so, asking our community to, if they would like to advocate with our elected officials, especially the governor's office, to not accept that budget proposal. We don't want something like this to happen to us. We don't want it to happen to our neighbors. So we're asking folks to consider advocating for restoring the hold harmless provision, fully funding all districts, and in doing that, not taking it away from the districts who received to fix the save harmless for those who had received cuts. So it's multifaceted. I think what we're really looking for is funding stability. And that's, I think, something that we all need to make sure as we go forward, again, with the provisions of the tax cap limit, we need to know that the state's foundation aid and the state's aid formulas for us are stable so we can appropriately budget. So we'll be hearing more about foundation aid and state and federal aid as we go through the line by lines of the budget. Moving on to budget drivers. As we look to put this budget together, and as we do every year, we look for what are the major things driving particular changes, increases, decreases, et cetera. So I think it's really important that the board and community know that even without adding any program, as we've talked about, this year was somewhat challenging in a lot of ways due to a variety of reasons. So we saw significant increases in health insurance premiums. So that was something we spoke with the Finance Committee this morning about. So a little bit more than we expected, but that's not uncommon here in this day and age. We saw, of course, our scheduled increases in employee salaries as aligned with our collective bargaining agreements. We are currently in negotiations with 2 different units, so we have to plan for our current obligations plus anticipated settlements. We also saw increases in state aid requirements and contributions to, in state required contributions to our employee and teachers' retirement systems. So those are kind of the 3 cost drivers in the different typical areas of the budget. We also saw a pretty significant increase in special education services based on increased student IEP needs. And I think it's really important. We always are looking to provide free and appropriate education for our students and budgeting based on those IEP needs. So what we discovered this year is a lot more increased needs for our students that had a lot of financial ramifications, as well as in addition to needing some additional outside placements that also come with transportation, potentially staff support in that transportation. We're also looking to continue to expand our integrated co-teach program at the elementary level. So all that put together was a pretty significant increase. So that was some of our challenge as we put the budget together. When we look at the budget, obviously, there's really two ways that you can close any potential budget gap, which is what we were doing this year. You can increase your revenues or you can decrease your expenditures. Pretty simple. And as we looked at it, we knew that we would need a variety of approaches to make that happen. So this budget does propose a mixture of those, again, that we will highlight as we go through the line by line. And again, I just want to thank the administrators. We've had numerous meetings. We probably have more to come. This is when thinking gets really creative. We appreciate the time that their time as we come and we look and scrutinize, really sharpen the pencil and look at everything line by line internally, so that when we come forward with a budget like this, we're confident that our resources are efficiently and effectively used and that they're aligned with our priorities and our goals. So I appreciate their expertise and dedication, and that they come with a problem-solving mindset. Everyone comes advocating for their department, for their building, advocating for the needs of all students, but also with a creative problem-solving mindset. So I think that touched on everything there. Just one more piece too. Our transportation costs are rising not only for the special education placements, but across the board as well, as inflation continues to hit a lot of different areas. And we did, within this budget, continue to maintain our 2% contingency, which has been our practice for the past several years. So here's the money shot, the big slide of what are we talking about for this year's budget proposal. So the total proposal for appropriations for this year is $93,400,000, which represents a budget-to-budget increase of $2.44 million. Year-to-year budget increase, that's 2.68%. And the projected allowable tax levy increase is 2.68%. That is still subject to change pending final state aid runs. We start the budget process based on state aid from the year that we're in, so prior year state aid. Then when the initial runs come out, we make the appropriate adjustment. This is not the final adjustment. Traditionally, we get a little bit more in the final adjustment, but given the fluctuations going on this year, we don't know if that's going to happen. So again, that's why we're hoping for some advocacy to make sure that we at least remain with what was initially allocated to us. When you put everything into the tax cap calculators, that's where we come up with a 2.68% proposed levy increase that is tax cap compliant. We've, for the last several years, broken out the operating budget separate from the capital budget, and that was when we took on the debt related to the capital projects from 2018. As you can see in this year, the capital budget is very, very small portion of this year's tax cap. 2.67% is related to growth in the operating budget and just an 0.01% on capital. Just see if I check my notes, make sure I've touched on everything there. One of the things that is important, and again, we'll talk about this more as we go through the line by line. You may recall on the revenue slide that, let me just go back to it so I get my terminology correct. Appropriated fund balance is one of our categories. In the prior year, I'm sure the board remembers, we appropriated $2 million for some capital projects for replacement of the HVAC units and the playgrounds. That was one particular type of fund balance. Right now, we do not have that kind of capital expenditure built in, but we do have a variety of other reserves. So we have a TRS reserve, that's Teachers Retirement System, an Employees Retirement System reserve, a variety of other reserves. And one of the things that we did this year, and we've talked about this, in looking at our reserves, trying to use them strategically to get us through times where maybe there's a little bit more stress on the budget, fluctuations in revenue. So this budget, as it stands, does propose adding an additional $1 million in fund balance as a revenue to this budget. 1.5, excuse me, I misspoke. 1.5 million to this budget above what we had allocated in last year's budget. Okay, I think it's an important thing because I know that's been certainly on the board's radar. Also within this, we are looking to allocate a full amount of the debt service reserve, similar to what we did this year. So those helped us to offset the increases that I mentioned earlier. We've long talked about the importance of maintaining healthy level of fund balances and reserves, recognizing that times might come where we needed to use them and draw upon them. And we felt like this is one of those times where we could start to use some of those a little bit more heavily than in prior years as we navigate the next couple of years, understanding that the state itself is in a little bit of flux and trying to make sure that we can preserve the programs that we have, but do it in a strategic and responsible way. So this is how the tax cap is calculated. We've seen this slide many times. We're over 10 years into the tax cap. So you know that the tax cap it's not really a 2% tax cap. It's based on 2% or the CPI, whichever is lower. In this case, CPI is much higher, so 2% was the growth factor that gets calculated into the tax cap. You work your way through the formula, and Jim will be showing us about this, I think, in our in-depth overview when we start the line by line. But you'll see the ins and outs of how the tax cap works. By the addition of the debt service reserve, as well as the additional reserves that are in there with the operating budget and the allowable tax levy increase, that does bring us to the 2.68% increase. It's always important to note, absent the use of that debt service fund, the maximum allowable tax increase that would be tax cap compliant would be 5.78%. So that's the real impact of that debt service reserve that the board has strategically continued to use. So we're, again, proposing that be included in this budget. Since it is kind of a maintenance budget, this really is in alignment with the board's guidance to sustain our current programs and opportunities that we've built over this last several years without adding. So we're maintaining our class sizes at or below board guidelines, continuing to provide that free and appropriate education for all students, not looking to necessarily grow program this year, but to go through the strategic planning process to then decide where to allocate those resources in the future. As I mentioned before, the one area of growth that we are anticipating, but this is something that's been spoken about the last several years, is continuing to grow our elementary integrated co-teach program. So that'll bring us, we'll have 5th grade, kindergarten, and 1st grade is what we're anticipating for this coming year based on critical mass of students in those programs. I will mention at this point in time, and it's always kind of interesting to put out what gets in, but also what didn't make it in. One of the discussions that I know it's been a priority for me, I know it's been a priority for the Board of Education, but because this really was kind of a maintenance approach, there is not currently in this budget additional support for our kindergarten classes. I know that's something, again, that we've talked about. And part of that is because given the gap that we were trying to initially close and current forecasted revenues, but I just want to put it on the board's radar that it just is something we're very much aware of and want to acknowledge that is probably on your mind as well. As we move further through the budget process, if your direction will help to steer us one way or the other on that, but understanding that there's only 2 levers for, again, as I said earlier, for making budgets work. Lowering expenses, increasing revenues. So if we're going to be looking to add anything more into it or make adjustments, we're going to have to be cognizant of both sides of that equation. The other piece that I would add is, as I mentioned before, last year you'll remember we had the $2 million for the HVAC units and the playgrounds. Currently, in what's proposed tonight, we do not have that type of capital line in there. We do have an upcoming facilities meeting after the break. So that is something that we may come back to you and propose in addition of that, pending the outcome of the the facilities committee meeting to see if there are, again, similar capital projects that we want to contemplate putting into this budget. So that could be a future adjustment. From a highlight perspective on facilities safety and security, these are things, again, that we're continuing to maintain and to continue to make progress around the district on. Not very exciting, but these are the necessary things that have to happen. HVAC controls on our systems, which makes them more efficient and makes our buildings more manageable from an energy perspective. Continuing floor replacement projects. We did the top floor at Prospect Hill this past summer. Additional floors need to be done. So there's a variety of projects that John Condon and his department are already planning for the summer. So you'll hear more about that in coming weeks. And continuing to make use of our talented internal staff for projects instead of using outside contractors to the degree possible. So that's kind of a great asset of having such a talented staff. In the technology realm, again, very similar maintaining of what we currently do. So John Sabalos has gotten us into a great refresh cycle with technology. So all of our 5th graders and 9th graders are getting a new Chromebook that they'll keep for 4 years. We continue to have a 1-to-1 ratio K-12 of Chromebooks, plus a variety of other technology resources for students and for staff across the K-12 spectrum. Continuing to maintain all the electronic resources that support teaching and learning. We have a wealth of those, and we've continued to maintain those as students are, teachers are actively using them with students, and we do review those analytics periodically to make sure that we're pruning as needed. As the board has heard a couple times throughout the year, continuing to support the MTSS process through continuing to grow our practice with branching minds and data viz. So that's been a big uplift for our technology department. So we're continuing those efforts into the coming year. And then the ongoing maintenance and growth of our district-wide infrastructure is also budgeted for within this project, this budget. That brings us, believe it or not, to the last slide, which is our key dates. And these are basically our budget reviews and our line-by-line sessions that will be spread out over the course of the next few meetings. So budget reviews, our next meeting after the break, the 28th, and that's also when we start our strategic planning. So the budget portion starts at these times, 7 o'clock on the 28th, 7:30 on March 20th, et cetera, and you can read through the dates. Keeping in mind our strategic planning on those days will generally begin at 3:30. So it'll be 3:30 strategic planning, working dinner, transition into our board business and work session on budget and any other business items that we need. We're aiming for the board to adopt the budget, and that was one of the dates. You remember we originally had it scheduled for April 30th. Due to the military ballot changes in those timelines, we had to move that back to earlier, so we're targeting April 17th for budget adoption. May 8th, state mandated public hearing, and yes, those go, and it seems like they would go in the reverse order, but this is the order the state tells us to do them. We adopt, and then we have a hearing. Even though there's opportunities for the public to come throughout the process to provide their feedback on the budget. And then our aim is for May 21st for our budget and school board election vote. Under the skillful hand of our new district clerk, she and Pauline Davies have continued to meet throughout last week, tackling policy and budget vote, and Pauline's going to continue to be a resource as we head towards the vote, and certainly Keenan Bean, listservs. Valerie's going to sign up for a bunch of trainings, so she is eagerly wrapping her hands around that budget vote. So we should be in good hands. And that brings me to the end. So we will pause for questions. I'm going to move back over to the table, and I know Jim's is going to be my partner in helping to address any questions you may have. I'll go back to there. Okay. Jim, did I miss anything or anything you want to underscore, reiterate, highlight?
No, thank you, Dr. Champ. Just that this is the beginning of a process that completes with the public vote, and that we have these meetings, and we'll be meeting with the Finance Committee as well through this process, through the budget development process. And it's, as Dr. Champ mentioned, it is an iterative process.
I mean, I do have a few comments or things to say, but I'll keep my powder dry for I guess the next meeting. But can I just say one thing, which is, or just kind of try and articulate how I'm looking at this. So, the guidance that we gave back in October was kind of keep things as they are. No additions. Please try and restrain headcount growth. And I'm sure there'll be lots of data around headcount growth, but it feels like it's going to be more or less flat-ish, right, in terms of headcount growth. So thank you. I also, as I look back on the last budget, I remember it was a $91 million budget, but 2 of that was CapEx for playgrounds and HVAC, And so the kind of operating, what I call the OPEX, the kind of cost of running the schools was more like 89, right? So as we kind of think about the right comparison year to year, is it fair to kind of say if we should be comparing the 93.4, not really with 91 last year, but with sort of 89, right? So, because if you kind of put the CapEx to one side, because that was kind of a one-off thing, the kind of the increase is from in OPEX in the cost of running the schools is kind of really 89 to 93, which is kind of around a $4 million increase. And the way I'm sort of reading it is by really doing nothing, and by nothing I mean by adding nothing, just the cost of doing business, as it were, the cost of running the schools has just naturally increased by about $4 million, which is about 4%, I think, of, 89 to 93 is like maybe like a 5% increase. I don't know if I sort of explained that very well, but is that a good way of thinking about it?
I think it's very fair to peel off the capital expense from last year if you want to do an apples to apples. And I think as we go through the process, what we hope to be able to demonstrate to the board and the board to the community is those drivers that are going to place pressure on the budget, like Dr. Champ mentioned, meeting student demand, the cost, some costs related to salaries and benefits that grew at a little bit faster pace than we had really anticipated them for growing, and then other things related to turnover of personnel, where sometimes there's some breakage and there's some savings, and in this particular year, we're not seeing that normal turnover rate that we've seen in prior years, which I think plays a role. Each of these things play a role into that, and I think through that process, again, hope to share that with you and demonstrate what that is. But there's no doubt there's a certain growth to the budget based on the students that present themselves to the district every year, and any of the costs built into any of the particular collective bargaining agreements.
I have a question, Jim. So last year, we used some funds for HVAC. Do you foresee any funds being drawn out this year for anything that's facilities related? I know we haven't received our plan yet, but anything pressing this year?
There's a couple of things that we've discussed that have come up. I think, again, through the process last year, one of the discussions was, as we look at playgrounds, let's look at all the schools, all the elementary schools. So Prospect Hill is the last one in that line, so I'm sure that's going to be part of the discussion. We looked at HVAC, where we're in the state process right now for receiving approvals, and what we're seeing is that there's been some cost escalation there just as a result of timing and types of equipment that'll be specified. So we're going to look closely at that. And then we'll look at other things with our facilities committee. That again, we kind of have a short list of things that we'd want to look at and make sure that we're able to meet the requirements and the wants of the community, so that we don't see anything's not working, so that we don't have a good experience for our students.
And then, Dr. Champ, my other question is, I'm glad you brought up the kindergarten question, because it will probably, depending how the demographic survey and how our enrollment turns out this year, we may see very similar concerns from parents this year.
Yeah.
And we will have to, I guess, as board, decide how we're gonna address it, given what you said. You could either increase or,
Right.
get more
Yeah.
revenue in.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge. But I know, like I said, it's been part of our conversation all the way through. I think we all see the need and the desire. It's just a matter of finding the pathway to making it happen. I think we do have a little bit of control as far as, class size and, how we might juggle some things within the buildings. We are limited in our classroom sizes. I think that was one of our biggest challenges last year, and
we have the same classrooms this year as we did last year. So we'll have to just look really creatively, I think, at that and strategically, and I think we all recognize the value of making sure that our youngest learners have the best opportunity, so to provide the best foundation for them. So we'll be looking at all that. We'll be looking at class size as well. Not making any formal changes necessarily, but trying to be strategic in how we make those section splits. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we look forward to sharing more detail over the next few meetings.
That brings us to committee reports. Now, the Finance Committee.
Sure. We had a brief Finance Committee meeting this morning in which we got a sort of precursor to what you just saw, really, where we just covered major budget drivers, staffing changes, funding sources, and various other matters influencing the development of the preliminary budget that Dr. Champ shared with everyone today or this evening. And, I think we reminded ourselves of the board's directive back in October to try and keep expenses as flat as possible in anticipation of the strategic plan. And from what we've seen tonight, this appears to have this budget appears to be delivering on that guidance.
We also had, are we done with Finance Committee?
I think we're done with finance.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Jim?
Okay. We also had a Safety Committee meeting this week, and we talked through the status of district-wide drills, and the district is up to date on all of its drills. We also viewed evac chairs? Yes, evac chairs that will help students down the stairs in case of emergency. And one will be placed at the high school, middle school, and one at Siwanoy as well. We went through trainings that are upcoming. So there is school monitor and building ERT, Narcan training recertification, also threat assessment training, and I think that's happening on March 15th. We reviewed the protocol for the monitors and the people who sit at the front desk at schools. We took a look at the protocols that they have to keep as sort of like the first person to keep the schools safe. And then on Martin Luther King Day, Anne-Marie and I participated in this. We attended active I was like, I don't see it on here, but active shooter training at Prospect Hill. It was very interesting to see, all the work that goes into preparing for a situation like that. And I thank everyone. I thank Pelham Manor Police Department and the Village of Pelham Police Department for coming together to do that. I think there was incident command training February 5th, and we talked about the Parent Square rollout and how helpful that has been in communications. We talked about, we were given an update on the EMS response time now that the town has an ambulance. I think we heard that for 2 EMS calls, the response time was under 3 minutes, so we thought that was a big improvement, right? And then, I think it's February 15th that County Executive George Latimer and some other officials, right, are coming to view. Yeah, are coming to see the the pedestrian issue at Glover as part of figuring out a way forward there to improve that situation. And then lastly, we talked about the Board of Ed coffee that happened on January 11th. That was actually safety focused. And I think one of the biggest things that came out of that was after there are situations, such as the bomb threat that happened recently, when students return to school, and that there needs to be some sort of, just some sort of way for the kids' anxiety to be lessened. And I think, I don't know if you want to speak to that there's now like a script for that when the kids come back.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that it's still in development. But yeah, that was one of the conversations we had during one of the board coffees. Some parents had said, had suggested, obviously when students, we always remind students if they are upset, they need to avail them, they can avail themselves of the counseling services. But they reminded us that often there's students who maybe aren't expressing that visibly, or just really encouraging us to normalize that, feeling anxious and stressed in these kind of situations is a normal reaction, and to find ways to help students process that. So generally at the schools, the principals or the clinicians will push in afterwards and kind of remind students of that. But we reached out, Gene Farrell actually, I reached out to him following that, and he's going to be working with the team to just kind of make sure that we systematize our approach a little bit more. Hopefully we can wrap that into our crisis plans. That way, to make sure that we're communicating as much as we can to staff during events, because we can't have a clinician in every classroom, but there's a teacher in every classroom. So what messaging can we give to them to help, provide a level of confidence for kids during a situation? And then also what language can we give them afterwards, just to help process. So we're working on that.
And Jackie, I just want to, and Dr. Champ, this is one of the biggest concerns that I've encountered as a board member by many community members, the safety of the students, because we've had some incidents, unfortunately, in January. And, I just want to reiterate, we do have a full-time staff on site who is, the main role is security.
Yep, Tom Drake.
Right? So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And that we do take these situations that are happening very seriously, and there's always a debrief and a lessons learned. And we all learn from when things happen, and how we then develop new plans to make sure that those situations don't happen again.
Yep. I think that was, did I miss anything, Jim?
No, thank you.
Okay.
You captured the agenda.
Okay. I'm wondering, I apologize, I just sent the board Jim's memo. It's been stuck in my email, so I apologize that. I'm wondering if, given the late hour, maybe just questions on memos as opposed to
Sure. Yeah.
reports. So I know they.
Suggestion accepted.
So, and I apologize that Jim's just came through to you, but I know Alice and Tracy and Steve sent their memos home along with, we were able to get that to you over the weekend. So if there's any questions or that you would like them to speak to, or?
Mine really cover the committee meetings.
Yeah.
And if I could just add, the Friends of Pelham Sports Fitness and Weight Room is progressing nicely. The flooring was installed, the painting is completed, the lighting is ready. We're just really waiting for some new equipment to show up. So we're very excited about that work, working with them. And I think once everything is set, there's a plan to move forward with the ribbon cutting.
I was gonna ask for a tour.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
It looks great. And I added a couple of pictures in my memo, so you can see kind of
Yeah,
the progress.
it's nice.
Excellent.
Okay,
All right, we're good.
good, thank you.
Thank you all for your detailed memos, too. Okay, so I think we can move on to financial motions.
Yeah.
Reports and motions, and I'll accept a motion to approve as a consent agenda, item 6.1 through 6.5.
So moved.
Second.
And any comments or questions?
Yeah, so
on this?
I will, 6.1 is the board meeting date adjustments that I referenced earlier. 6.2, sadly, I'm going to have to bring back to you again next time for another adjustment. That was an update on our single-page calendar for this school year, since we took a snow day a couple weeks back.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow is now snow day. So let me explain, really, this is a perfect opportunity to explain how it works, though. So unfortunately, this means that we are only going to have a 3-day Memorial Day weekend. So if you recall, the original iteration of the calendar had 2 blue dates in May, the 23rd and 24th. Those are what we call contingency days. Those are related to a provision in some of the collective bargaining agreements. If we take no snow days, then we get those as 2 extra days where schools are closed, which is what we had in the past school year. No snow days, very mild. We had a lovely 5-day weekend. But the way that works, if you take 1 snow day, we lose the first of those 2. And now, because we don't have school tomorrow, it's our 2nd snow day. We'll now lose the second one of those. So I'll be bringing this back to you for approval again at our next meeting, the 24th of, in addition to the 23rd, reverting to a school day. The 24th will now revert to a school day. That does still leave us 3 more snow days before we would have to then go to giving up additional vacation days. So you do see listed at the bottom a big paragraph about that. So if we were to use 3 more snow days, then we would start to go into the spring break and the February break, or excuse me, the spring break, and it happens Passover weekend. That hasn't happened since I've been here, but those are there just as a worst case scenario. But unfortunately, due to tomorrow's cancellation, we'll be coming and bringing this back to you again next time.
Okay.
Sorry.
So are
No
we
problem.
not going to approve it tonight?
We could do it either way. We could table it and just come back with a revised draft at the following, or we could approve it and then just reapprove a revised.
Whatever you guys want.
But we took a consent motion, so
Yeah, I
maybe we
think
just
that's
leave
the
it.
easiest thing, 'cause I don't even know how to, I don't
Okay.
know how
How
to.
to undo. So let's say, yep, approve it. For right now, it's accurate. As of tomorrow, it will be inaccurate, and we'll bring a new one back next time.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposition? No. Unanimous, okay. All right, so moving on to policy monitoring and governance, we have the second reading of the workplace violence prevention policy 6190, which is required policy at this
Yep,
point.
new policy required by the state. As Dr. Garcia went into great detail last time, so I won't reiterate that. But I do know that our hope is that if the board is amenable, that you would consider waiving the 3rd reading and then adopting this tonight so that we can meet the statutory requirements for timelines.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to make a motion to waive the 3rd reading?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. And then we can consider a motion to approve
Right.
policy 6190.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think we can do item 8.1. Through 8.3 as a consent agenda. So I'd accept a motion to approve those items.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Nothing specifically, just a series here of resignations, leave appointments, leave replacements, some club stipends, and observers, like student-teacher type observers. Pretty standard.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No. And I'll accept a motion to approve Schedule D.
Oh, there was 8.4, I think.
Oh, did we miss?
I think we missed
Where's
8.4.
8.4? Oh.
Bottom of the page.
It's the very bottom. All right. I need a motion to approve 8.4.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion to approve Schedule D.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any new business?
Not tonight.
Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Great meeting.
Bye, Ian.
All right. Have a great night, guys.
You too.